So today begins the third day of a 5-day residency with our featured artist of the morning, Anne Wahlstrohm, everyone. Now, again, she's made her way from Stockholm, Sweden, to take over our museum for these next few days. Now, she's come along to the museum with a handful of different drawings, and it is the job of the museum crew that you see in front of you to translate these drawings into actual glass sculptures. So we see that process down in the center. We are working with the piece we see on our board. Now, due to the heat that we're working with, it's distorted with the color, but it is possible that one of those lines will end up being the green line. If you're wondering about the pattern and how that was applied, we can see that on the left-hand side. Another team is preparing the next piece, next sculpture that will be made. But I do want to point out essentially our palette that we have here. Now, we began this residency with producing cane and marini. Cane and marini is a way, or Italian way, that we can design the glass. We see some of this cane down here. This can be broken up to smaller chunks, which are right here. When you're touring through the museum, through our store, through our gallery, if you notice something that has lines, regardless if those lines are straight, horizontal, vertical, twisted, we always make those lines pretty much using cane. So here we have a variety of different canes available to our visiting artist. We also have some marini down here. These ones will produce the lines, and these will produce the dots, the polka dots that we see in our drawings. We will lay out several of these marinis to create that pattern we have. And throughout the day, we will also show how this stuff was produced. As of right now, we are focusing on producing the first sculpture of the morning. If you have any questions about what's going on, my name is David, and I am more than happy to answer questions. I do just want to introduce the heat sources that we're using to continue to work with the medium. We're using a glory hole, which is about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. So why do we make it 2,300 degrees? So it's at that temperature, so we could just speed up the process. Right now, that glass is cooling down, and if it gets too cold, it becomes rock hard. We can't manipulate it. So if we want to continue to work with it, we have to get it hotter. And that temperature is hotter just to speed up this process for everyone. So why is Sarah dressed up in this suit? So Sarah has suited up in a protective layer. She's wearing Kevlar gloves, welding jacket, face protection. We're going to set our finished sculpture inside of an annealer. The annealer we're using is on our left-hand side with the green number 1. It's sitting at 890 degrees and will be the home of every sculpture that's made here today. That's the first piece of this morning. Can we give a round of applause to our hot shop crew, and most importantly, our visiting artist of the week. So, if the glass is broken free, anything that's made, if it's just left out in the open, guaranteed it breaks in a matter of minutes. The molecules will just get too cold too quickly, and that stresses the glass out, eventually causing it to break and crack. Yes, so that is controlled environment. Around maybe lunchtime tomorrow, we can open our annealer and view all the finished artwork. Yesterday, we used the annealer on our right-hand side with the green number 4. Around lunchtime, maybe a little bit past that, we can open our annealer. Right now, it's at 220 degrees. It's a little too hot right now. Maybe when it hits around 100 degrees, we can open that up and then bring out this wonderful artwork for you, everyone to see. So the projects that we work with here. So first of all, the Museum of Glass is essentially like a Disneyland for artisans across the globe. So any artist from any medium can apply to come to our museum. If you win or a residency by various ways, you can receive up to 5 days with our professional crew that can make anything your heart desires, essentially. So we have a very, very talented crew. For today's project, we are focusing on our visiting artist for Anne, who's come out from Stockholm, Sweden. And the series that we're working on right now, she actually began back in 2017. And I want to show you some of those images on our big screen, a little bit of her portfolio. Now she's back to make another series, and this artwork will be going to the Gallery Glass in Stockholm, Sweden. So today we're focused on Anne's pieces, but if you join us next week, we will be having a visiting artist. Every year we will host about 40 visiting artists a year. The projects sometimes are very unique. If we have a screen printer, we might be using glass as a matrix for screen printing. We may have technology involved and have a 3D printer down here printing molds that we can use in glass. So there's various artisans that have come along to the museum, but right now on our big screen we are showing you some of the artwork that was explored about 2 years ago. One of my favorite ones is going to come up here. It's a red one. It's stunning. So let's introduce our furnace. This is where all the hot molten glass is being brought out. One of our glass makers here, Darren Dennison, has gathered that hot layer of glass. When Darren feels he has gathered too much or he wants a symmetrical shape, he can use gravity to assist him and get rid of excess glass. Now, these steel rods we use in our studio are specifically made for us. They're made to counteract the heat that we're working with. But oftentimes when we gather, there's a lot of heat that builds up with that rod, so we just use a little bit of water to cool it down. Now there's various shaping tools a glass maker can use to shape the mass. Typically a wooden block is used after it gathered to ensure the mass of glass is symmetrical, and our bubble will blow out evenly also. Now we've already applied the pattern to our piece. Our next phase is to begin to gather the necessary mass of glass to make our large sculpture. Now this pad that we're using is just the Wall Street Journal folded on itself. It only lasts a few days, but that's completely fine. We have plenty of newspaper. Now, for our audience that joined us a little later, again, down on our table here, we have various pieces of glass that we can use to design it. We have lines, we have some dots that we can use, and we even have our color palette that we're using. We're really focusing just using black glass, white glass, a little bit of gray, and also a little bit of green today. And as our next piece is being worked on in the center, on our left-hand side, we have another team that's working on the very next one. The next piece that we make will be similar to this one, but a white dot with another white halo around it. So we will follow this next one, just so we can understand how we got to the place we are in the center. It looks like Darren is getting ready for his last layer of molten glass. Now, it's due to the viscosity of the glass that allows it to stick to the core on contact. Essentially, the furnace is a ceramic pot or tub filled of molten glass. Now, since the glass is corrosive when cooled down and heated back up, we leave the furnace on all year around. So it doesn't ever take a holiday break or weekend vacation. It doesn't take any of that. It will always be on for about a decade before we do maintenance to it. Are they at different temperatures? Yes, they are. The glass that we're using melts at 2,100 degrees. That's about the same temperature as lava, and that's the temperature of our furnace. The glory hole is slightly hotter at 2,300 degrees, and this is just to speed up the process ever so slightly. So as we're preparing the bubble for the expansion phase, on the left-hand side, we're getting ready to color some glass. So I do want to follow along the color application process because here at the museum, we only melt clear glass, and we intend to keep it that way. If we want to use color, it is always purchased from a manufacturer. Again, this is our color palette down here. Depending how dense or saturated we want that color to be, will dictate the size of the bar that we use. We preheat our color bar inside of a garage, about 1,000 degrees, and then pick that up using a little bit of glass. As we follow on our left-hand side, we have an artist, Manny Castro, and he has a little bit of that solid color on the end of the rod. His job is to make that bar more malleable, enough to spread it around a beginning bubble. So Courtney Branham, another glassmaker, part of our crew, he's gathered glass on a blowpipe and introduced an air bubble by blowing air through the blowpipe. What will happen is the color will be placed on top of the bubble, and then that color will be spread evenly. Can you hear the communication going on between the teams sometimes? Well, we have our gaffer, Ben. Everyone is playing a specific role. The gaffer is the person who's in charge of making the sculpture. And that person takes a seat in the center. Just because you see Ben as the gaffer today, if you come in next week or the following week, you may see another member as the gaffer. Now, when our gaffer says blow, blow hard, blow gentle, it can dictate the amount of air, but typically we blow about the same air pressure you use to blow out a candle. Now, when we blow air, it takes the path of least resistance, so wherever the glass is hotter, it will expand. Therefore, by quickly using the newspaper pad, we can cool or chill a certain area we wish to remain thicker. Oh, it does not take too much air, just a little bit. It's the heat that is really causing it to expand. Now, I know our bubble doesn't look like our shape just quite yet, but we have already designated a break-off zone. So we're creating a jack line. This is how we separate the actual piece from the steel rod itself. And this always happens early in the process before we have a defined shape. So if we look at our board, we notice that we are working on the one below. We have white dots, some with black dots, and we have the secondary one that will be completely white. So as the glass blowing process continues in the center, the color has just been applied on our left. That will be pushed evenly. And it's very important that we spend our time when we're applying color to ensure an even density of color. If we rush through this process, you can see that rushed process sometimes. The color might be uneven. Now we're using a mixture of cork pads, centrifugal force, and also sometimes blowing air or placing our palm over the blowpipe. And once again, we are working on sculptures here today with our visiting artists. Oftentimes, inspiration comes from these sculptures and just walking into a forest or down by the beach. There's so many different elements that she is inspired by. And one of my favorite places to view what's going on is always the top balcony. We also have some stunning artwork from our past visiting artists. When an artist wins a residency here, we ask them to donate one or two pieces to our collection. The rest of the artwork belongs to them and is sent back to their studio. And it looks like this sculpture is nearly complete. The last and final step that we take here in the hot shop is to slowly cool it down. Just like the last piece, if it's left out in the open, it can break and crack. And so off to the annealer on our right-hand side, we are going to be opening these doors. Hot air rises, so it gets a little hot. It's not dangerous, but you can definitely feel some of the hot air rising. This oven is sitting about 890 degrees Fahrenheit, and Sarah has suited up with Kevlar gloves, welding jacket, and face protection. That's the second piece of the morning. What a wonderful way to start it off. We used one of these torches here. We just use it so the water that we use to break the piece free so that crack doesn't spread, so it heals it. It also just ensures that there's no sharp edge on the bottom. It's nice and smooth, so if you run your hand accidentally, you won't cut yourself. With that said, off to the next one already. The team on the left-hand side has already begun. Essentially, we're like a production line. We begin on the ends of the museum, and we conclude in the center. Now, even the glass that we're using here, it's not your average glass. This glass is purchased from North Carolina, from a company that makes glass specifically for the process you see in front of you, working with glass on the end of a steel rod. We appreciate and love all our members, so thank you so much for your support to all our members. There's various ways you can support the museum. The quickest and fastest way is the donation boxes, but just by coming into our museum, you're supporting your local group and community of glass artists. Anytime we see woods in the studio, we can always assume they're made out of some fruit wood, like cherry wood, which just contain more moisture and they last longer in our studio. Now, this studio we have here is not your average glass blowing studio. A lot of this equipment we have is oversized, and we can safely say it's probably some of the largest, if not the largest, in the United States and in the globe. Oftentimes, we have some artists who rent out our studio either to get their hands on our oversized equipment or our very talented hot shop crew. So there is various ways we can add lines to glass or stripes. One way is the canes that we have out in our table. Another way is by bringing over a wrap of glass. Now, what we have down here in the center is the canes. Now, these canes have been rolled up several times among themselves to produce a handful of lines in that glass that we have. We're going to go ahead and attach that to the massive glass on the left, and this is how we're going to produce the lines. I understand. So we are adding dots to our bubble now. Now, we've preheated these dots inside the garage. It's about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We've also introduced them to the 2,300 degree chamber to ensure they won't crack or break when it's attached to the core. And it's up to our artists to decide how many of these are laid out, because of course we can fill the entire bubble with these dots. Now, in between the sections that we have, we're going to attach the glass that we have on the right-hand side. So that's going to be brought over. We can see that process of attaching even more lines in between layers. Again, if you have any questions, my name is David. I'll be walking around the museum here. Please feel free to just raise your hand, just grab my attention. We have various glass makers throughout the day. We will introduce them. But again, we do have a visiting artist taking over our studio. So if you want to show your friends or your family something unique you saw here, this may be a good time to hit record. And you're more than allowed to take as many photos, videos as you like. All we ask is if you plan on posting them on social media, you tag the Museum of Glass. But even everything on that big screen can be viewed at the comfort of your own home. We do a live stream. If we're blowing glass, we are live streaming both on our website and also YouTube channel at Museum of Glass, Tacoma. And even on our big screen, we can begin to see that the rat that was brought over is made with a bunch of the smaller canes that we see out in our pallet table. Now, we began the morning with just making this part. It is time consuming to make this wrap. For that reason, we're not using a lot of it. And we also have another one down here. I'm sure we should have enough to get us until the afternoon, if not even towards the end of the day. Now, a lot of glass making is about heat management, ensuring that the glass is hot enough to continue to work, but not too hot that it then becomes manipulated by just turning it and the centrifugal force that's being applied. Now, for our demonstration, we want to get rid of the texture. We know we have to gather some more material, and if we gather glass with texture on the surface, that can essentially trap air bubbles in between the layers. So to minimize any air bubbles that are gathered, we heat up that surface, ensuring that the surface becomes homogeneous. if you're joining us, our visiting artist Anne is joining us, taking over the museum from Stockholm, Sweden. Now, her last time, her last residency was back in 2017, and this is a continuation of that series. That artwork that was made back in 2017, that went off to the Gallery Glass in Stockholm, Sweden. And eventually, all the glass that's made here will go back to her studio. Now, if you're wondering about the application, the texture, and the pattern that we have on that surface, we can see the next pattern is very similar to the one we have, the spread it out dots. This was made on the first day of the residency, just so we don't have to make this. This does take a day to make and cool. Once we're happy with how the pattern is laid out, we preheat this and then get a bubble and roll on the surface to pick up all of these dots. So it looks like that surface is now almost smooth. So in glass making, there's a lot of waiting. We wait for the glass to heat up, but we also just wait for it to cool down. By cooling the core down, we're ensuring that we can maintain control over the hot layer that we are about to add. All the clear glass that we want is being melted in our furnace at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a ceramic pot. Holds a lot of glass. Now, it's due to the viscosity of that glass that allows it to be gathered upon the surface. Although we have two of these furnaces, we alternate between using them to ensure a good quality glass. So it seems that there's still a little texture on the surface. Now, if we reheat the mass inside of the glory hole, the reheating chamber, it's at 2,300 degrees, and it's just going to get everything hot. And we don't want everything hot. We just want the skin or the surface hot. For that reason, we can just let it cool, use an intense flame, about 4,500 degrees, to really preheat the skin of the mass. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Museum of Glass. Hopefully, everyone is settled in now. Now, my name is David. I'm your MC here today. If you have questions, please feel free to ask me. Raise your hand, shout my name. I'm more than happy to come over and discuss this wonderful process that we are doing here today with visiting artist and Wahlstrohm, who's stepped off the studio, but I'll make sure to introduce you to her when she steps back to our studio. With that said, we have a so are these employees of the Museum of Glass? Yes, they are. So everyone we see here, these are employees, part of our hot shop crew. But they are all very talented. Most of them have been working with glass for 20 plus years. Okay, as we begin here, I just want to point out the drawings that our visiting artist has brought along. Again, she resides in Stockholm, Sweden, on the other side. So she has brought along all these different drawings and illustrations. It's up to our crew to translate these sculptures into glass. So we see the ones that we're working on right this instance. In the morning, we began with making this piece. We then transitioned off to the second piece being this one. And then right now, we are working on this one, the top one, right? So I'm going to walk around, show that to everyone. We can see that process. And we can also show how we make the lines and how we add the dots to this, all right? So I'm going to put the mic down. I'm going to walk around with some glass so we can understand how those were added. Actually, before I do that, on this table, we have some of those pieces. Real quickly. If we want lines, we use cane. So we have some of these lines of glass. Every single line you see in our drawing is one individual cane. We then have Marini. Marini is a different style of glass. The only real difference is we're using the face of it instead of the side. Notice that this one has a white dot with the black halo around it. This one will produce, actually that's not the right one for there. It'll be more like this one. Black on the, or white dot, or I guess it's this one. White dot on the inside with the black halo around it. And we can see the dots. We'll make sure to walk around so everyone can view what we're working on. So this stuff right here takes like a full day to make. So we made this on Wednesday so no one has to see that. It can be quite time consuming to produce this. Now once we have a design laid out, we then preheat that pattern. We're going to show you that pattern for the next one. It's right here. And this still needs to be preheated. So on our big screen, we're going to show you our pattern for the next one so we can understand what it looks like before it's heated. All right, so we're showing that on the big screen. This is the next pattern. You see the Marinis are laid out. Later on, these are going to disappear into the garage where they will preheat at 1,000 degrees. When they're hot enough, we then bring them out and we can attach them. We will be seeing this process. We start off on the left-hand side of the studio, but then work to the center to conclude the demonstration. Our visiting artist is standing by. Again, she's joining us from Stockholm, Sweden, taking over our museum for the next few days. Anna Wahlstrohm, everyone. Yes, so Anne's right here. Do you guys have questions? I love questions. It's like my favorite part about my job. I've been waiting for my school group to come in here too. I was like, questions, yes. This is my best friend, bro. All right? This is my best friend right here. You guys have questions? Yes. We can start off here and then we'll make our way towards the center, all right? Why do we just leave the fire on, right? Well, that way it's ready to go right now. We don't have to turn it on first and then use it because these glass makers need that fire instantly. It's very crucial. Am I related to Ira? No, this is my best friend. I'm telling you. He's a homie. So how do we make something where there's a glass vessel and then something else inside of that? Well, that's pretty easy. First, we make that small vessel. We then make the large vessel, place that vessel inside of it, and then make the vessel outside. We got to close it down slowly. It's a little time-consuming, though. It is very time-consuming, I should say. No, at that stage, we just keep the glass warm enough to prevent from breaking, but not hot enough for it to actually move. So it's stabilized. Question at the top? Shouldn't we be wearing protective gear? Yes, and we do take those precautions. We don't allow open-toed shoes here, so no sandals. Sorry if you like sandals, especially during the summer, I know. We also like to wear natural fibers, so the glass makers will often wear like cotton, because polyester, like basketball shorts, that will stick to your skin, and then you got to go to the doctor to have that surgically removed. You have a question? Can we make people here out of glass? You know, glass has no limits. If you can dream of it, if you can think of it, one way or another, it can be done. What we have here at the museum is quite a unique operation. We're not here to sell you glass, but if you do purchase some from our store, fantastic. It goes back and supports the Museum of Glass, but we're here to push the limits of this medium. Every year, we host approximately 40 artists a year from across the globe, and we make glass for them. That glass they get to keep. All we ask is for them to donate a few pieces to our collection. You have a question? How long does it take for the glass to get to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit? Doesn't take too long. We can just use one of these intense flames. You have a question? Hi. It's okay. I can come back also. Do we get burned a lot here? So this is a very high level professional glass blowing. So the professional team you see in front of you doesn't really happen too often. But the most common way we get burned is not really the hot glass. It's the tools that touch the glass. You have a question? Why is it called the glory hole? All right, let's settle this right now. I have no idea where that name comes from. I just know that that's the given name. You can call it reheating chamber if you like also. But it's still a round barrel on its side, lined with fire brick, made to insulate and keep the heat inside. You have a question? How do we make the glass? Well, that's an excellent question. So here at the museum, we're purchasing our glass from North Carolina spruce pine. There's a company that makes glass specifically for offhand glass making. So the process you see in front of you, working with glass on the end of a stick. We know the basic ingredients. We know it's silica sand, soda ash, and lime. But like the Krabby Patty from the Krusty Krab, it's a secret formula. We don't know exactly what they're adding to make this glass have an extra long working time. I'll take your question at the very top, but we do need to wait for the torch to come off. Have we ever dropped melting glass on the ground? Oh, yeah, that happens. We'll show you that process too, because that is a technique we use here in the studio. Yes? That's an excellent question. So what is the towel thing that we're using so we don't get burned? So this shaping tool is actually just a wet pad of newspaper. Maybe your Eagle Guardians might read this from time to time. Just some plain Wall Street Journal folded on itself. And we burn right through it. It only lasts maybe a week, but we just fold some more. We have plenty of newspaper to go through. So when we blow air, it always takes the path of least resistance. So wherever the glass is hotter, it's going to expand towards. So therefore, our artist, or our gaffer, in this case, Ben, he's using that wet paper pad to cool down certain areas he wishes to remain thicker. Like a regular cereal bowl? Like a regular cereal bowl, those are pretty easy. It's just a bubble of glass, essentially. Today we're focused more on creating some artwork rather than some functional glassware. But if you're interested in seeing some like the traditional glassware, we do that in between visiting artists. So not the next week, but the following week, that might be a good week that we can make some traditional glassware. So what is the difference between the glory hole and the furnace? The furnace contains all the molten glass we are using, while the glory hole contains no glass. It's just a fire chamber. There's only fire inside too. If we have marshmallows in here, we can easily cook them in there, glaze them nicely, make some s'mores. You know, if you place them in that fire right now at the temperature, yeah, it's gone. Immediately catches on fire. But if you turn it off, give it a few minutes, it's perfect temperature. And that's a perfect time to reheat your lunch also. I say that by experience. Yes? So, so the water that we use on the newspaper, right? So what's really going on is that a layer of steam is created on contact with the newspaper, so we're not really burning the newspaper immediately. So right now the color is also very distorted. It looks red and orange, right? But that's not the color of the sculpture at all. It will look similar to our drawing. Again, that black, white lines, white dots. That's what the glass will look like when it's completely cool. It's just the intense heat that's distorting the color. How is stained glass made? There's various ways you can make it, but one way that we could make it here in the studio is we would make a cylinder. We would make a cylinder out of all shapes, cut the bottom of the cylinder and cut the side, heat it back up, and then the cylinder will unfold when it's hot. And that's how windows were made for a very long time also. And that's how you can make some sheet glass, stained glass. Before then, the way that you would make like stained glass would you just make a large plate. You can cut that up to smaller pieces. So is this so glass blowing? There's various ways you can become a glassmaker. You can go to college. There's one training you can go. There's about 50 colleges or so in the United States that teach glassmaking as an art form. I say art form because that doesn't mean you're going to have amazing hand skills and you're going to be able to create all these fancy things. It doesn't work that way. If you want to have those hand skills, those techniques, best to work in a local factory. There's a few factories in our area and a few glass blowing studios that you can just learn a little bit. But this is a medium that you're not going to get good or master in 10 years. It takes a lifetime to pursue. For myself personally, I've been working with glass for about 8, 9 years, and I'm not nearly as good as this crew that you see in front of us. They make everything look really, really easy, but I can say, in fact, that with my experience, nothing. So, does anybody want to guess what happens if we finish a piece and we just leave it out in the open? Any guesses? It'll melt. Unfortunately, it won't melt, but I saw those signs exactly. It's just going to break. It's going to explode, break, and crack. What'll happen is this glass right now is really hot, and the ambient temperature will shock the glass, especially the molecules, and that's what's going to stress the glass out, ultimately causing it to break, crack, or explode. When we look at history, melting glass for us was quite easy. It was figuring out how to prevent it from breaking that took us the longest time. Now we know we can use a formula to determine the annealing cycle. Our annealer is the oven on the left-hand side with the green number 1. It's just going to prevent our piece from breaking or cracking. for the next several hours. So around lunchtime tomorrow, we can open our annealer and view our finished artwork. One of our teammates suited up in a heat protective layer, Kevlar gloves, welding jacket, and off to the annealer. What a beautiful piece. That makes the third one of this morning. Let's give another round of applause to our visiting artists, everyone, and the whole Hot Shop crew. They're doing an amazing job. Again, that makes the third one of the morning. We've been working since 9 o'clock on these. The morning began with a lot of the prep work that needs to be done. For Anne's artwork, there is a lot of prep work, but luckily we did that behind closed doors so we can speed up the demonstration for everyone here today. On our big screen, as we start this new one, on the left-hand side, we're also going to show you some images of Anne's artwork. Question? So what happens if we make a mistake, if we leave the glass in the glory hole too hot, inside too long? What happens is that gravity begins to come. So we turn the rod to create centrifugal force, but at one point we can't turn the rod fast enough to beat gravity, so it just like drops like soup. I mean, we might see some of those. That one on the top is one of my favorite pieces. I mean, amazing. The red does not capture, this picture does not capture the true beauty of that red. How do we get it to change colors? So we've been working with the color all along. In the very beginning, it just happens to be that the intense heat that we're working with is distorting the true color. Hey everyone, how's it going today? I'm David. Hi. Hi, Ira. So, if you guys have questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have about what's going on today. How long does it take to make one? Our team has been making one around an hour, maybe give or take a few minutes. They're really good though. Maybe if you had someone like me helping, can take us way longer. Is it glowing orange because it's hot, or is that the color? This is the intense heat we're working with. Very quickly, I'll talk to Courtney, figure out what color we are working with on this next one. So this is a dark gray. You know, it doesn't look that way right now. Our color palette is found down here in this table. For this residency, we're just really using black, white, gray, and a little bit of green. But I will bring over some of that gray color, what it will look like when it's complete, because it doesn't look anything like that right now. Now, if we want to use color here in the studio, it always has to be purchased. So we purchase our color from a manufacturer. Depending what color you like, we will add a different metals. So very quickly, can we talk about our favorite colors? My favorite color is green, so we can add maybe like a metal, chromium, or iron. Do you guys have different favorite colors? Blue. I love blue too. Blue is a cobalt. We can add some cobalt to make some beautiful blue. Yes. Pink. Expensive taste there. So if you like red or pink glass, you have expensive taste because red and pink is made from gold, so it makes it some of the most expensive color in our industry. It could triple or quadruple the price for the same amount of bar. You have a different color? Yellow. I have to come back to you to find out that yellow. I do know that purple is made by adding manganese, and if you like black glass, we just add a bunch of manganese. So one of my favorite places to view what's going on is the top balcony. And for my school group, as long as your instructor allows you, please feel free to roam around. We have some stunning artwork made by our past visiting artists also. When an artist wins a residency to our studio, they get to keep all the glass. We just ask them to donate a piece or two to our collection. And it happens to be that our artist today is a glass designer. She's been working with glass in this medium for over 40 years. But sometimes we have artisans who've never worked with glass before. Sometimes this is their first time. Again, we are here to explore this medium using other or different techniques. So if you're wondering how we attach the dots, right? We have some dots out here. We notice that our visiting artist, Anne, is working on the next pattern already. Now, the shelf or the plate that we're setting this glass at is first preheated inside the garage at 1,000 degrees. We have Manny Castro down here. He has the Pastorelli plate, which has the canes or the marinis. So what needs to happen is these marinis need to absorb enough heat that they become warm enough that they won't break or crack when they meet the hot mass. They can't be too hot, however, because then they will just melt to the plate and cause some sticking. What we want to do is prevent any of that sticking that can occur. So very quickly, I want to introduce the glory hole. It's 2,300 degrees, and we're like a production line. We begin on the ends of the museum, and then we work our way towards the center to conclude the demonstration. We have our great bubble here in the center with Courtney Branham. Once he gets that bubble hot enough and the marinis are ready, we're going to roll on the surface and just pick these pieces of glass up. So I want to point out that down here in our annealer, this annealer has some of the marini that we're using. This still needs to cool down. Later on, I can bring it out though and show the pattern to everyone and how that will be chopped up and broken up to smaller sections that we can use. So it's Friday, by the way. Take care. Bye now. Oh, so what is so down on the far right hand side? What's going on? We're actually chopping up some marini right now. Actually, let's go. I'll try to get a camera down there right now. We can see that process going on. So with the intense heat that we're working with, how does that affect our eyesight or eyes? You know, I'm sure after a long time of several years, you might see. You know, it's like staring, not necessarily staring at the sun, but in reality, we can stay quite safe. There is different glasses we can wear, but here's a key detail that I like to point out sometimes. There's actually a screen mesh that we stare through most of the time. There is times that we're staring inside directly, but most of the time, it's actually this screen mesh that's protecting our eyes a lot. So right now, we don't have enough mass to make a large piece. If we use the massive glass that we have right now, it would probably be half the size of what we want. So what we need to do is gather more glass. If we gather more glass on the surface that we have right now, we're going to trap air bubbles in between the layers, and it's due to the viscosity of the glass. It won't flow to any crease, crevice, or even dot that's in the glass. For that reason, we always ensure that the surface is homogeneous and smooth, so no air bubbles can be trapped between the layers. If you're heading out of the museum, thank you so much for stopping by. Have a happy Friday. I know we still have our school group down here on a field trip. That's exciting too, you guys. It's like an extended weekend essentially, because Friday is all fun, right? Have you guys checked out other parts of the museum yet? Have you guys gone to your tour yet? Ooh, not yet. This is the first stop. This is a good way to start it off. We have some amazing pieces out in our galleries. Now, if you're unaware how this museum or the how it's designed, that came to us by world-renowned architect Arthur D. Erickson. So he designed this building after the incinerators that used to scatter our area. Now, Tacoma was the logging capital of the globe at one point, with over 73 lumber mills in our area. With such a large lumber industry, they would burn a lot of excess wood. And that's where the design came, or an inspiration for the building that we are in here today. Now, at the very top, we also have a fan to accelerate the hot air rising, so we stayed nice and cool. And below all the stands, we have an air system, so we have constant fresh air being blown into the hot shop floor. I would actually say it's hotter in the top balcony, and maybe even where everyone's sitting at, than it is where I'm walking around. Unless you're working directly in front of the flames, it's probably hotter on the visitor end. Well, if you have any questions, again, my name is David. I'll be floating around the studio, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have about today's demonstration. Hi. How many times does the glass have to go inside the glory hole? Unlimited amount of times. Um, we will spin as long as it takes to make something. If it doesn't look right, it doesn't look right, and it won't be, we can't sell it. So we don't settle here at the museum. It has to look perfect, so we will continue to work however long it takes. But it takes us about an hour. This team is really good. We have some questions in the middle. Hi. This piece will take us about an hour or so. How heavy is the glass? We can double check with our team right now, but I would say we're floating around 10 pounds, give or take a few. Yeah, what's up, man? So if we notice what happened, one of our glass makers went into the furnace. Again, it holds 1,000 pounds of that molten hot stuff. We're going to view that happening again right in front of the furnace. Again, it's due to the viscosity of the glass, the thickness of it. It's not too viscous. So how do we attach the pole initially to the glass? It's the same process. The glass automatically sticks to the rod. Imagine it's like warm honey. So if you're ever eating like pancakes or waffles, you notice the syrup sticks to your fork and knife. It's just because how thick it is, and that's the same thing going on with our glass, to a bigger level though. How do we make flat glass? We could either just get the glass and let gravity just make it flat, or we can make sheet glass, and that's made by making a cylinder. So for a very long time in history, if you wanted a window in your home, you would go to a glass maker. That glass maker would make a cylinder for you. They'd cut the bottom of the cylinder, cut the side of it, heat it up, and as it heated up, it would unfold. Eventually, you would be left with a flat plate of glass. What's up, my man? Dude, Ira's the homeboy. All right. Well, everyone. So our glass makers right now, again, everyone is playing a specific role. Using a wet padded newspaper to control that bubble so slightly enough. Now one of our glass makers is also standing by to blow some air through that blowpipe, about the same air pressure you use to blow out a candle. In the center, we are now separating the usable glass from the steel rod. To do so, we create a jack line, and that constriction or break off will be exploited later on in the demonstration. If we see some fire coming from the tool, the jacks, it's the beeswax that's used to prevent any sticking or scratching that can occur. As this is going on our left-hand side, we have just applied color to our bubble. Here at the museum, we only melt clear glass. If we wish to use colored glass, it has to be purchased separately. Some of our color can be seen at our front table here. Our main palette for this residency is black, white, gray, and also a little bit of green. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You have a wonderful Friday afternoon. After all, it's Friday. You can't hate a Friday. I believe we will be having another school group joining us later on, but other than that, we have several. We have a few to enjoy the process. Again, visiting artists. We're seeing the beginning process on our left-hand side. If you didn't get to see the beginning process, we'll look no further than the left-hand side, as this process has just begun. Whenever we're squishing the bubble, we're pressing on the bubble. We place our hand or palm over the blowpipe to ensure we're not collapsing or even deflating the bubble. What happened, man? What's up? Our sculpture is nearly complete. One of our teammates has suited up in a protective layer. The next step is to set it inside of the oven on your left-hand side. This oven is sitting at 890 degrees and is the home of everything that's produced here today. This oven will eliminate the stress in the glass that causes it to break. That stress is just caused by the ambient temperature cooling the glass down. So over 24 hours, our glass will slowly cool down inside this controlled oven. A little water, a slight tap, and it's broken free. We use this intense flame to round out the sharp edge. And what a beautiful piece. Can we give another round of applause to our visiting artists? And also, of course, this whole Hot Shop crew. We've been working since 9 o'clock to produce a lot of the prep work that needs to be done to produce this artwork. In the center, this massive glass, we started off in the morning just so we don't have to make this in front of everyone because this is time consuming. This massive glass is made with a bunch of these canes. So we laid out the canes out on a plate, rolled on the surface, and repeated that process about 3 or 4 times. So that is time consuming. Now we've made this, and we're making enough. We've made enough of it, so we don't have to make this for the day. We've already have enough. What we now need to do is make it hot enough so it can be applied to the bubble. This massive glass will produce all the essentially lines in the glass, or the very thin lines that will be applied. Well, we are now ready to apply the massive glass, so we're going to coat the bubble with these lines for our next sculpture. Well, we spent a long time making this cane, this glass, and we could just throw it away, but we did spend quite some valuable time. So we're going to pull that, and that will produce a cane that has various lines inside of that. I believe we used all the ones that we had prior. As we make more, we'll definitely make sure to point it out and show it to the crowd. Actually, it's right here. There we go. So if we notice our cane, it has a bunch of different lines in it. That's what we've just produced, and we can use this later on. Now, all around the Hot Shop studio, we have these steel countertops. We use them just to shape, maybe draw out heat, maybe to change the shape, the contours of the bubble. But we just refer to that as marvering. And what we're really doing also is eliminating the texture on the surface. We want to make sure it's homogeneous and all completely smooth. Now, by simply letting the core cool down and using some compressed air to speed up this process, Courtney is ensuring that he can gather the maximum amount of glass he can, but he's also ensuring that he doesn't have to turn the rod as fast. So instead of working harder, he just works smarter. So if you're joining us, welcome to the museum. We do have a visiting artist taking over our crew. Now, our visiting artist is prepping the next pattern. You can see her working alongside all the prep work we've made, and this is the piece that we're making right now. If we take a close look, we notice that there's a bunch of lines in our drawing. So those lines were added earlier. The next step is to add those white dots, right? Since they're on the surface. So out on our left-hand side, we made some white dots earlier, about 2 days ago, actually. And we see those white dots down here. Little white on the inside, clear on the outside. That is what we have heating up on a plate. Here shortly, we're going to get these hot enough and then just attach them right to the bubble. And we're going to see that on our left-hand side of the Hot Shop studio. If you're joining us again, this was perfect timing. We notice this is happening. One of the last steps before we move on to the next phase. So to fill in the gaps we have, we're using an intense flame. It's about 4,500 degrees to quickly stick those spots that need a white dot. Now it's just the heat that we're working with. Hot glass likes to stick to anything that's hot. We're going to melt and bake these dots into the glass. Once we have a smooth, homogeneous surface, then we're going to go ahead and gather more glass because that's not enough mass or material to make one of these larger pieces, these sculptures that we have on our big board again. And we can see what just came out of the cold shop. Besides having a hot shop in front of you directly behind the studio, we have a cold shop, and we have an excellent, probably one of the best cold workers out in our area. Now, the pieces we made yesterday, those are still cooling down, and they're in the oven on our right-hand side, the green number 4. They're still well over 100 degrees, so hot to the touch. We're going to let them cool down ever so slightly. These will then go back in our front table so everyone can view them. Little bit by little, they will get pulled to the back to be cold worked, and then they can be sent off back to and studio back in Stockholm, Sweden. It's definitely hot in there, but they are some beautiful pieces inside. The pieces that are going to be brought out, they were made on Wednesday, so the first day of this residency. Now, there's still texture on our bubble. What we can do is we can use the glory hole to heat it up, but it gets everything very, very hot. And we only want the skin of the glass hot, the very surface. So by just naturally letting it cool down, if that core gets nice and cold when we go back to the glory hole, we're going to ensure that only the skin, the surface, will get really hot and become homogeneous. So we work until 5 o'clock, but we do take a lunch break in between 1 and 2 o'clock. So this is going to be the last piece before we take our lunch, but we will also start a little bit early. When we return, we're going to be making vessels. Right now, we're focusing on creating these stone sculptures. So when we return, we will see something similar to our pedestal, but I did hear it will also be flattened. Oh, and the mini one. So when we return, we're going to be making something similar to the mini one that we have. That one's so amazing. Oh, so what Kristen has just informed me is that this mini one was made with the residue or the remainder that was made with the bigger one. So typically we could just throw that away. We don't reuse it, but it seemed that there was enough that they decided to make something small. What we oftentimes is just make a small cup or maybe of a shot glass since there's not enough glass. So it seems like we're good settled in now, right? Welcome to the museum, everyone. I'm David. Welcome, everyone. Hi. Hi. If you guys have questions, hi. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. Hi. So anytime, just feel free to ask me. Raise your hand, shout my name. We have a visiting artist. Real quickly, can I get a raise of hands if this is your first time ever here at the Museum of Glass? If this is your first time, raise your hand up high. So if you have your hand raised, hopefully I see you later on in the near future with your friends or your family. This is a unique place to work with glass. It's one of the only places in the globe that does this. So our visiting artist, Anne Wahlstrohm, who's joining us from Stockholm, Sweden. She is in the gray, and she's laid out a pattern. So this is going to be the one that we make next. Can everyone see that? You guys have a really good view. But on this table, we have our palette that we're working with. The actual colors are right here. We are only working with black glass, white glass, gray glass, and a little bit of green. Other than that, those are our colors. Here at the museum, we only melt clear glass. So if we want to use colored glass, it has to be bought separately. I'm going to pass out some color to you all also, but we'll start at the end of the museum. We can pass around a little bit of color. So the first thing we do is heat this up and then apply it. So you can pass it around. I want to talk a little bit about color, though. Color is made by adding different metals. I like green glass, so we can add chromium or iron to make green glass. Do you have a different favorite colored glass? Purple. Ooh, purple's nice. So to make purple glass, we can add a bunch of manganese. To make a black glass, we just add a ton of manganese. Do you guys have other favorite colors? Blue. Ooh, to create a nice blue, we can use cobalt. Different metal oxide? Yellow. I don't know. We'll come back to you with yellow. Do you have a different favorite color? Gold. Ooh, we can actually use gold. But, gold will actually produce some very luscious red and pink. So red and pink glass is more expensive than under other colors because of its gold content. So we know our visiting artist has been working with glass and in this craft for over 40 years. Her last residency here at the museum was back in 2017, and we're going to show you some images and some artwork that was produced in that residency, because this one is a continuation of where we left off. Now, our visiting artist has also brought along various different designs and drawings. It is up to our hot shop crew to translate her drawings into glass. Some of these sculptures are vessels. Some of these will be more abstract sculptures, like the stone series. And oftentimes the inspiration for these sculptures is nature. The red ones are some of my favorite ones. This picture does not capture like the bright and true red when you see it in person. And when we return from lunch, we will be making one of the vessels like we have here. We will probably be making one of the miniature versions when we return. But before that, we need to make this last piece. We're getting ready for another layer of glass. Let's quickly introduce the equipment that we're working with, beginning with the furnace, since we will be stepping right in front of it. On our big screen, we're seeing a diagram of the furnace. It holds 1,000 pounds of molten glass. Now, it's due to the viscosity of the glass that allows it to gather or collect on the surface. So essentially, you can think of the furnace as a hot bowl of glass, hot tub. Now, that furnace will always be on. It will be on for 10 years before we do any form of maintenance. How's your day today? It's Friday, and you guys are on a field trip. It's like an extended weekend, right? Yes. So is the liquid we're using for some of these tools, is it just water? Yes, it is. We use water so it doesn't burn away these tools. So some of them, it's like wood. That's cherry wood we have there. It's like a ladle. Looks like a wooden block. Hence the name, the block. But we use this to ensure that the bubble we have will blow out evenly and symmetrically, and it rides on water. So on contact, we're not burning the wood. Rather, a layer of steam is created on contact, and that's what we're using. This is one of my favorite places to stand. What's up? You guys have a good week? How was school this week? It's cool? Right on. You have a favorite subject? You like reading? You like math? English? Japanese? I'm sorry, I didn't know French. Anyways, what's new with you all? You guys playing video games? You guys reading books? A little bit. What kind of video games do you guys play? You guys on Minecraft? Roadblocks? Art? Ark. Oh, I know that game. It's quite a new one. Have you guys ever played Minecraft before? Yes. Do you guys remember the formula to making glass blocks in Minecraft? So sand, right? So here at the museum, we use very special sand. So this sand is not like mined from the this sand is not like picked up from your beach, but it's mined from the ground. And then our fuel source isn't coal here, like in Minecraft. We use natural gas. But very similar. So you just made a great observation. Our cone-shaped structure. This is very iconic to our area. If you haven't had a chance to look up, I recommend it. The museum is always so stunning. Well, it looks like it's bright and sunny outside too. But this building was designed after Tacoma's history. Our architect, Arthur Erickson, he's also designed the city of Vancouver, or part of it. So the design of this came from that Tacoma used to have a lot of incinerators where we're located, the Foss Waterway. This is where they would burn excess wood, and that's where the inspiration came to him, as the burners that once stood in our area. No. So the team that you see in front of you, they're very talented, so accidents don't tend to happen here in our studio. We often get asked, do we get burned here? And the reality is that happens almost, I guess it does happen every now and then, but it's most common that we're burned by the tools that touch the glass and not the hot glass itself. That is very rare to be burned by the hot glass. Have I ever been burned? Yes, maybe a few years back, about 4 or so, I got burned on my right hand. You can't really tell because I use like scar cream, but yeah, it hurt for a while. What happens if the piece of wood gets stuck in the glass, you know? If something messes up, we might just have to start all over, throw it away, and begin all over again. Do you have a question here in the front row? What's up, my man? I can take that bar too. Yes. How long does it take to make a sculpture in glass? It depends how decorative the piece is. For ours, they're taking about 1 hour or so, but we are also having a large team. Typically, we only have 3 glassmakers here, but for this project, we've decided to hire also more help just to speed up the process for everyone. Now, in our massive glass, it looks similar to our drawing, but notice that there's a weak spot in the glass, a crevice or a place that we can separate the usable glass from the steel rod itself. Now, I know our piece doesn't look like our drawing yet, but that's because that crevice or weak spot is always made very early in the process. This pad is just a wet pad of newspaper. It's the Wall Street Journal folded on itself. Questions here? Yes. So I had mentioned earlier that if we mess something up, that where your question is, can the glass be reused? And here at the museum, we won't reuse that glass because it's contaminated with color, but it's also just contaminated with the dirt and debris. Question? Oh, so what happens if it burns? If we use the wooden block, what happens if it burns? It smells like a barbecue in here. And that's why we like to use fruit wood. You have a question here? Is the glass heavier when it's hot? No, it's not. What's difficult is that all the glass weight is on the end of the rod, so it can feel like you're going fishing with two bowling balls on the end of the rod is what it can feel like. Our left hand slides closer to the glass as it gets heavy to counteract the weight, to become a fulcrum. And if you've ever played on a seesaw or a teeter-totter, the fulcrum is the balance point in the center. You have a question? So the pole, does the pole get hot? Well, if you take a close look, you'll notice that that rod goes from its shiny stainless steel to a dull gray and black towards the tip. We don't place our hand in the discoloration. Pretty much it's always where the rod is shiny. If the rod does heat up past the darkened area, we can just use a little bit of cold water down here or on the other side of the museum. So will the glass fall off if we didn't continuously spin the rod? And yes, gravity will essentially take over and just cause the glass to fall. So to counteract gravity, we're taught to turn the rod, and that happens on day one. You're always reminded to continuously turn the rod. And I would say that's one of the most difficult learning curves to learn is to just, your hands naturally continue turning. No. Why don't we wear gloves? Well, that's an excellent question. Oftentimes, protective gear like that can restrict our movement and our dexterity we have. For that reason, we don't wear them. I also want to point out that right here, we're pulling out some glass. This is Marini. This is how we produce the dots that we see in our glass. So if you're wondering how those dots are made, they're made with these long strands of glass. We'll try to show you one here shortly. Do you have a question all the way at the top? What are they making right now? So we are making an abstract sculpture, part of her stone series. We see it down here. Oftentimes, the inspiration for this series is nature. So again, we have it right here. So we're going to show you some of this right now. So the way that we made those dots is we made some of this. So do we see this? There's a dot on the inside and it has clear glass and then some more white glass. We just placed a bunch of these small pieces on the bubble on the surface to make that pattern. Do you have a question here? Can we pass it around? Unfortunately, this is sharp, so I can't have it leave my hands. I just want to make sure that no one cuts themselves when they're here at the museum. And glass is very sharp also. Do you have a question? How does the furnace stay in shape? Well, this equipment is specifically made to stay on for a long period of time. We also have a shop tech here that ensures our quality of glass and our equipment is running perfectly. Well, the last and final stage that we take is to set the finished sculpture inside of an annealer. The annealer is the oven on our left-hand side with the green number 1 and sitting at 890 degrees Fahrenheit. It will be the home of everything that's produced here today. A little score on that jack line, the weak spot we made earlier. And it is complete, on its way to the annealer. What a fantastic way to start off our morning live glass blowing demonstration. Can we give our visiting artist one last round of applause? She's been working long, hard, setting up the patterns. We are going to be taking our hour-long lunch break, but we will return again in a little bit over an hour. For this project, we have another team. They're going to come in here. I would say probably a little bit over 30 minutes they're going to be in here prepping the next one. When we return, we are going to be making some of these vessels that we have on our pedestal. We have the drawings laid out right here. So when we return, off to making these smaller vessels. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon. Please feel free to roam around our hot shop. We have some stunning artworks at the top balcony.